I'm Amber Leidick, your host, and this is the Art of Equine Alchemy podcast. This podcast bridges the gap between science and spirituality in the equine industry. Through healing journeys and real stories shared by courageous and unfiltered individuals at the forefront of these shifts, we explore how they reclaimed their power, found their voices for themselves and their horses, and how the work they do paves a road that gives permission for everyone else to do the same. Our intention is to lead a shift within the equine industry that challenges outdated traditions and methods that no longer align with our updated understandings of the horses and humans, mind, body, and spirit. Our mission is to create an expansive platform and community, online and in person, to connect with conscious and compassionate people in the equine industry who have the courage to speak up on the behalf of the horses. Thank you for being here. Together, we can be the voice they do not have. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Equine Alchemy podcast. Today, we have Celeste, beautiful Celeste, who we've done so many podcasts together in different ways.
So many.
Here we are again in a different way. So for those people out there that do not know about you and your work in the world of horseland, you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. I feel like if anybody listens to all of our podcasts, they're going to hear a different answer
I know.
because I
I
hate
know.
this question so desperately inside of my soul. Only because I don't really ever know how to answer it, but I feel like as we've done this more and more, I've gotten more clarity around how to answer it, which is great. So for those that haven't heard of balanced movement method, it is kind of a business that I started, and it's a tagline that we started using. It was actually something that my husband came up with, funny enough, and so it was like a thing that we were doing. And it's really just all about looking over a horse and helping establish their nervous system through correct development of their body. Yeah, it's kind of like a biohacking thing. And so we just do really slow, gentle in hand work. We do some energy work. We do written work, and everything is formulated around the nervous system and making sure that the body's nervous system and the mind's nervous system are all working together in terms of how you would normally think of the nervous system, like parasympathetic and sympathetic. And then we also are targeting developmental muscles and skeletal alignment to prevent nerve compression issues. So like brachial plexus compression, lumbosacral compression, cervical spine compression, things that cause a lot of undiagnosed lameness issues and behavior issues. We've really traced it down to it being suspected nerve compression, and then how to alleviate it in a really beautiful, natural way through using the horse's movement to do it. So it's really cool.
Yeah, there's so many parts that from the beginning, I think when I first started following you and you were in that phase of like, I'm taking this into the world and I don't know what it's going to look
I
like.
don't know.
And it was,
When we talked, I didn't even call it pillars yet. I didn't even know, like we hadn't even broken it down yet. It was like, yeah, my
I know.
little master class of people that were going to show up of 30.
I know. Do you want to come to this thing? I don't know if anyone's going to show up, but it'll be fine. Like, yeah, sure. So funny.
And then it did. So
Yeah.
it's been, but the cool thing about the evolution of it was that when I did the master class, I really didn't think it was going to be anything like you, I mean, and I was just very pregnant and feeling very useless. And that, I had finally gotten to the stage where I couldn't really go out and do a lot of things. And people had been asking about all of the transformations that I had in the horses the year before. And I was like, I could just get on and do like a live, and I could just do a free for all and answer a bunch of questions and like let everybody know. And it was just like here, like I just got up and like poured out my everything that I had for 3 hours straight, which for the record, being very pregnant, I did not take a pee break in those 3 hours. So I was like really in it. But it went so well. And I think it was just a call where like so many people felt validated and like all of these little things that they had thought. And like the big thing that always comes back is they're like, oh my God, this is like the missing piece. And I always thought that was such an interesting thing because I mean, there's definitely pieces to it and like how I've been able to piece together the anatomy from being a body worker and the training lens from being a trainer and competitive rider. There's that's a cool thing, but a lot of what I teach is kind of already been out there for a long time. And so like I'll get some shit for people for like reinventing the wheel, and I don't think I'm reinventing it. I think I'm just explaining it in a different way, and I'm making more of like a purist approach to it. But it's been really cool to see how many people have taken it over the years and just gotten like crazy results with their horses. It's just, like it's its own entity. It's not even like it's not even mine. Like I try to manage it to be mindful of like the horses, and we have our team of people that I certify or I sign off on and be like, yeah, they know what they're talking about, because there's a lot of people that don't. But for the most part, it just kind of like took off in its own thing, which is what it was supposed to do all along. It's not, this information isn't, it's not mine, it's not ours. It's like I feel like we just kind of channel it and then let it out in the world, and then try to foster it as best as we can to support it. Yeah, it's been a really rad journey.
Yeah, I think my favorite part
Um,
is that you are allowing people, for the most part, at a base level to like understand the way that the body's working in a way that people can hear it. And I
yeah,
think sometimes for me, even being a trainer and then me messing with a little bit of stuff and like, wow, that gets a result. Cool. I had no idea what was going on
right.
inside of the horse, right? It was
Yeah.
just like toying with things, and to be able to go, oh, have it explained, and then go, here are these like specific things you can do,
Hmm.
to either
But to
diagnose.
actually just target that and
Mhm.
to, get into it instead of it being like an accidental. And I love that. And like the number one thing that I would have for comments of people coming in is like things like that. They're like, oh wow, like I've been doing something similar, or I had this result, but I didn't know why. And it's like it's so fun to get to be the person to come in and like validate it, like help you piece things
Mhm.
together and be like, look at this cool shit you've already been doing on your own because you're following your intuition. And the brilliance I think about the work for people that are really invested in it and understand it is that it's all really about listening to the horse. That's it. That's it. That's
Mhm.
the whole thing. So if you've been, a good horseman in your life and you understand how to play with balance, for the most part, you've probably already been doing it. Maybe not directly targeting it the way that we've broken it down, but you've already been playing within the parameters because you've been listening to your horse and you've been helping them achieve balance. And that's, naturally it all kind of goes together. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Embarrassingly enough, I think for the majority of my career, I can safely say like I never took into account what was going on inside of the horse,
I
like
didn't
ever.
either.
Yeah, it was just like this is what this discipline wants their horse to look like here. Let me fix, quote unquote, for those who are listening, the behavioral issue or the problem that they're having, and then shape the horse to look like I know they want it to look,
Yes.
and
Yep.
then just send it along. And I'm such a good trainer. When like the moment I started to like really recognize that, like, oh, hold on, like this isn't actually real. And I would hear people say stuff like that horse is so lame. And I was like, what are you talking about? It looks fine to me. But I think for people, and so I just talked to Tara and we were talking about this swing and this pendulum of going from within the industry right now. I feel like there's a swing of total entitlement. This is my horse. This is what it does. I make it do this thing. If it doesn't do that, then it's sort of like a byproduct and gets tossed. And then there's this other swing that's like, I feel so bad now that I know I can't touch my horse. The only way my horse could
Yes.
possibly be happy is if it was out in the pasture with friends and never saw
Right.
another human. And we talked about how it's kind of there, but also how we've all kind of went that way, where it was like we came from this place and then we went like, holy shit, we don't know what we're doing. And
Yeah.
um how nice it would have been to have a mentor be like, oh no, this is totally normal. This is the next step. You know what I mean?
Right? Oh my
And
gosh.
I know. She's like, it would have been a lot faster, but it's fine, and so that's like the beauty of, I think, the group of people that are going to be there is that everyone is so fully understanding and non-judgmental about the process, and
Mhm.
everyone can hold space for people no matter where they're at in the process of it, because it's like we've all been there
Because we've
and
all been
no,
all of the ways.
yeah.
And it's something that I try to really bring like out, and like I am very selective over the people that I'll work with, but I hold total empathy for a lot of people around like if they've never had the conversation or the information presented to them, because I mean I was a pretty high level competitive rider and I was training with Olympic coaches. I was training with incredible horsemen. Nobody,
Mhm.
none of them mentioned the horse's development. None of them mentioned in terms of like the physical. Like nobody ever taught me how to look at a body and be able to register more or less what it was dealing with. I could tell you the horse had a top line. I
Mhm.
could tell you its conformation because we're taught to memorize conformation. I could tell you whether or not it had a decent amount of groceries. I could tell you ish about its feet, like whether or not they looked good, which, doesn't really mean anything either. But I had no context or education, and not a blip did anybody ever in all of those years say, hey, you know what? That doesn't have a thoracic sling. And that's why, when they land the jump, they're completely inverted and they're really struggling and probably having nerve pain. And that's why they're refusing, because it sucks when they take off and land. These were not conversations that we ever had. And so when I started learning about it and realizing that there was like this whole other realm, it's such an interesting thing to think about, that it's just not it's not a conversation that would be had. And the closest example that I can give to people on this, that I'm a little bit concerned how it's going to land, but it's true, so it is what it is. But I was born and raised in Hawaii. My mom was Hapa Native and Spanish, and so I can get tan and I can get the long hair, so I can kind of get away with like looking like a local. But my dad's super white, and so I can also, I'm very clearly not Hawaiian. And growing up, bred, born, and raised there, I didn't know that racism was a thing unless it was against white people. Like, you did not want to be white under any circumstances. And we didn't have social media because, I'm that old. And so this was the world of which I lived in, was that there was no racism. You just really didn't want to be white, or you were in like big trouble, and you have to be super, super careful that you don't get killed. And then I moved to the mainland, and I learned over the years that like racism was a thing, but that like white people had the one up on it. And I can't even begin to tell you the mind fuck that was for me, because I was like, no, 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 whoa, 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 wait a second. How did they get away with that over here? Like, that's fucking bananas. It was bananas to me, like completely blew my mind. And that's the kind of like stark separation that I feel is between the realm of horse training and horsemen that don't even consider that this is a thing versus that, because it's just not. You hear whispers of it and you hear things, and it's usually associated with, like hippie mumbo jumbo, which I will admit, at the day and age of social media and fucking Google, sorry, but on the day and age of having information so readily accessible, that now a lot of this information is able to be found in like published scientific studies, you know, there's a little more room for, I guess, asking people to rise a little bit and explore other options. But I
Mhm.
do understand that the conversations aren't happening over there. And so I want to give that to them. It's why I'm so passionate about trying to educate and be like, hey, because I will say I've never had a single person who rode, even like the chronic like dressage riders that are like really behind the vertical and they're really cranking on the horse's face. When I get the opportunity to sit down with them, and I'll bring a little book and I'll show them pictures and I'll show them before and afters, I'll educate them about like the tongue and the hyoid and everything that's going on in the body. I've never once had anybody be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do
Mhm.
the thing that's better for my horse. I've never had them
Yeah.
do it. They've always wanted to be better. They've just never had anybody sit down and like actually explain to them and then show them also how they can achieve the results that they want while, doing it in a more mindful way. So it's all in educating.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you only know what you know. So if you're just living in a bubble filled with the algorithm says, and every mentor I've ever had and trainer and book I've read says XYZ, this is how you do the thing, then you really do solely believe that that is how
Yeah.
you do the thing until you see something else. And the value of just like remaining curious in a space that's safe to be curious, because that also social media is a scary, scary place for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So we've all experienced that at some level for sure. And like modern day, like versions of so many things where I think I find it interesting that just from people sharing ideas, there can be so much criticism and so much hate thrown
Oh,
at
totally.
something that is like, we're all here to be better for our horses, make our horses better, and fully understand how people could not just be more open to like, okay, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. Um, and so we were talking about this space of people on such a far end of the spectrum, and there's certain trainers that are sort of pulling them down the pipeline, and then we're like at the end where we're like sucking them into the like deep depths of like every aspect of it, from like the spiritual part to the like scientific part to like all of the things being smashed together, and still being able to go out, given your horse's sound, go and still do the things. So
Right.
that was the other thing where it's like, yeah, you can have all this and also you can go show if you want,
Mhm.
if your horse is feeling like it, like all the things are in place. You can still have all that. You don't have to, completely jump ship on all of that. And I think all of you guys as presenters embody that. They can go and enjoy being with you, playing with you, doing the thing still, so long as you know, can honor themselves and yourself through the process and do it in a way that's good for everyone versus just forcing and shoving everyone everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how very ego eradicating that is, actually.
Isn't it? It's my it's my favorite thing to say. I'm like, well, so this was my first ego eradicating moment, and then came this one, and then this was the time that I burned my whole training business to the ground because I was never allowed to touch a horse again until I figured this out.
Yeah. So the thing that I'm giving everybody that gets a ticket to the event is a access to a portal, and basically what it's taking them through is 3 stages of transformation within alchemy.
Mm,
And the first being like the flames, like the fire, the shit that hits the fan, you know, the divorce, the, you know, the life event, whether it was horse related or not, that kind of made you feel like this is it, like everything is over, this shit sucks. But then through that was a lot of beauty was born. And I think we all have that experience. And I felt like it was important to share, because I think sometimes people get into those moments and like, this is it. And I'm like, no, like this is feels like shit.
mm,
It's never
mhm,
comfortable, but
mhm.
it's not it. It is the beginning of something.
It's
So
not
do you have something, you know, specific that you can think of where you're like, oh, wow, like
I, I have a lot.
I
I have a
know, I
lot of
know.
things.
I'm asking everyone to pick what, like one-ish things, and everybody's like, oh, let me like roll through my Rolodex of experiences.
Yeah, so for I'll just kind of it wasn't even a specific thing.
Hmm.
I think is something that is really because we all have things and we have
Hmm.
a lot of time a lot of us have a lot of things, right, that can be pretty radical, but for me it was like a whole year of just radical upheaval, right? I
Mm,
have an extremely abusive relationship, physical, verbal, very emotional. And with that divorce, I also my whole identity shifted. And so who I was as a horse trainer and the community that we had, because you know, we were really invested in our church, and I had, you know, all the people that I thought were friends and all the people that I thought were family. And when I finally was able to get out of that situation, I watched everybody basically abandon me because they didn't support divorce. And so
mm,
it was either I stay in a really toxic, abusive
mm,
situation or I remove myself completely. And then I just watched everything just disappear. Like everything that I believed that I was supposed to be my entire life went away. He left us very, very broke and with a ranch with a newborn baby and a toddler. And I had to sell my horses. I had to sell my jewelry. I didn't have friends. My family didn't show up. I was suddenly just had like nothing. And then shortly after that, my mom passed away. Shortly after that, my wolf, who was like my totem best friend, everything passed away. And it was just this, and in the middle of all of this, my vision and my lens on horses was shifting because I had got introduced to body work and I understood that horses were dealing with pain for their behavior. And because I was also a victim of abuse, I think you see how you get a different lens when you start understanding that and you start saying, oh, they're in physical pain and we're bulldozing them through that. Well, that's quite
mm,
rapey. We should not do that. And
mhm,
so you get a more of like a fire of advocacy because you're defending yourself and your trauma and this, you know, this being that's going through it. And I had all of this shit happen in a year.
mhm,
And it completely, and it was just, you know, I used to surf and sometimes you get caught in a set and you're just like, oh, this is it, I'm going to
mm,
drown, because every time you come up it's boom and you get hit again, you go back under. And I remembered surfing and being like, okay, like what's the best thing that you can do in these situations is you just float. And I allowed myself to disassociate a decent amount, which, you know, healthy or not, it's probably saved my life. But I just kind of was like, wow, this is my whole everything is ending. And every time I turn around, something else is ending and it's ending and it's ending. And I don't know what else I'm going to do. I'm a mom and I love horses. And I had to get, you know, 2 or 3 grown-up jobs to pay the bills. And it was just it was a whole period of my life where I just learned to, I mean, I was not good. Let me be very clear that I was not graceful about this. Like I'm making it sound like I was graceful about it. I was not graceful. I was drinking a lot of whiskey. I was really having temper tantrums. Like it was not a good look. Um, but I got through it. And the biggest thing that I was learning through this just constant change that happened and everything. And I mean, obviously I've had huge catalytic issues, not issues, but losses since then. I mean, lost Dragon, I just lost Maze. Like, I mean, it's not like my life hasn't continued to radically change, but in that year, I learned to just let it, you can't hang on to it because you're completely out of control. There's
Mhm.
nothing you can do about it. So you can grasp at it and continue, stressing yourself out, or you can just say, okay, well, that just really sucks. And you let it go and you let it go and you let it go. And you just kind of like float like you're in the ocean, just kind of in between sets, waiting, just waiting for it to stop. And then it's like the set stopped and I realized that like the shit storm that I was stuck in, like handed me over to this really beautiful island that I didn't know existed. I was like, what? Um, I met my current husband. I got to realize what a healthy relationship felt like. I attracted good friends. Catherine came into my life, and then shortly after, all of you guys came in. I have It was so cool to have all of this loss and upheaval shove everything away and then see that it makes space for something else. And I learned that. And I guess that would be my biggest thing to tell people is it's like when you're really, really in the shit, like nothing will make it not suck at all. And now at this stage in my life, when I'm in it, and I was just in a really gnarly one like last month. Like I had a really like low depression state after Maze and I just broken my leg and I mean it was just like it was too much shit, right? That happened all at once. And I'm like, can I not? Maybe just like what the hell? And along with that though, I sat and I remember and I have these conscious decisions or these conscious thoughts now that when I'm really, really in it, I'm like, you're holding both at the same time. Like this really sucks and I'm devastated and I don't know that I want to like keep going through this stuff. And I know that on the other side of this, like I know that this thing that I'm sitting in is just a really, really intense portal. And if I just stick it out, the thing that's on the other side is going to be more than I could ever imagine. And I just hang out and I wait. And then it happens. And then I get these little inspired things and life is better today than I ever could have imagined it to be. And it's just that's life. It's just a fucking video game. You go through it and then you just got to learn to wait it out. But having support when you wait it out is so, profound. I know for a lot of us, I don't know everybody's story that's on here, but I know for a lot of us, when we went through our really gnarly stuff, like we truly were alone. Like I was truly alone. I was losing clients left and right that I'd had for years because I didn't I didn't like that we were pushing horses through things anymore. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to change this program a little bit. And they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We want the bigger bit. We're going to this competition no matter what. She can suck it up and deal with it. And well, cool. I guess I'm just not going to be a horse person either. And that's all of my innards. So I don't know what else I have to offer the world if I'm not doing that. And here we are, been, what's it been? 7 years? That's pretty crazy. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the beautiful part about that is it really just burns away all the stuff that it's just not true. The things that don't align with you
Right.
end up leaving and and how that is such a gift when you look back. And also that I think people sometimes think, well, we're going to do this work and I'm going to focus on my awareness and how I feel. And I'm like, it's not like comfortable, right? Like it's not going to be like some like vacation. Like there's so much freedom within it because your creativity starts to flow and then the fucks you give lessen and then you can expand and reach more people and it becomes more impactful. But like the process of getting there is never fun. And I think when people start to feel that discomfort, they think that they're on the wrong track or something. And I think
Well, when
it's,
you're losing your community,
mhm,
that's what's so cool about like these events and having the people that we have and it's the same thing for changing people's mind in the industry is community is 90% of it. And so when you have the situations like for me, I had to get out because my situation was abusive and I'm a mom and I'm fierce and I'm like, okay, like this is like I had my why with my kids, but even that was really hard. And there's a lot of
mhm,
people that get stuck because when you're up leveling, and even when things seem fine, it doesn't even have to be a catastrophic thing, but when you're just doing work on yourself and you're up leveling a little bit and you're raising your vibration and you're changing your limiting beliefs and you're kind of swapping things out, you're no longer going to be a match for the people that were a match for you before. And so those people are going to get really pissy because, oh, you're changing or, I don't
mhm,
like this new you. Well, of course they're not going to like your, and then you feel shamed potentially into trying to go back to that box that you were in because, oh, well, I don't want to lose these people. Because if you're losing community, that means that you're a bad person. Like society tells us this over and over
mhm,
and over again. And we will feel that as a human being forever.
Mm.
I will never probably not be like, oh God, I lost another one. Like, am I a piece of shit? Should I really look at, and I do, and I question it every time, even though I know I still question it. And
Mm.
then, and then I can kind of default back to our community and being like, okay, look at these amazing people. And what I love about our community too is that we're all constantly up leveling. Like none of you guys at all are in the same like space that you were in
Mm.
last year, even like 6 months ago. Like there's
Mhm.
always a new evolution. Whereas I go back and I think about people that I was really close to even 3 years ago, and nothing has changed. They're in the same cycle, they're in the same stuff, and which is fine. It's no judgment, but that's why we're not in alignment anymore, is because I just am not, that's not how I'm doing life anymore.
Mm.
And it's tough.
Mhm. Yeah. So if you could really think about the theme, obviously, is us talking about how many profound and impactful lessons the horses that we have in our lives bring forward for us. And it's always the horses who say no, and it's a hard no, whether it's their body or who they are, usually both together in one. And I know we all have several, because this is always the same thing. It's like, what do you do? Like 1,000 things. What's the most impactful? Like a million different horses, you know. But if there was one that you wanted to share the story of that brought forth like some lessons for you that feel like is relevant for right now and what you want to share, who would it
Yeah, I
be?
mean, I think by now everybody kind of knows about Dragon. Will probably always be that one. I bought him before, right before my relationship went in flames. And I bought
Mhm.
him and I was like, oh, I have this idea. I have a chance to own this Andalusian stallion. I'm gonna have this breeding program. It's gonna be so cool. Like like what I had my little dream bucket. And I bought him, and a month later it all went to shit. And then I had to sell him. And I was so in love with him. Like I was so in love with him. And all I ever wanted from the time I was a little girl was an Andalusian stallion. Like that's like I got him. Like he was all I ever wanted. And then I had to sell him. And I was, really angry and heartbroken about it. And I did. And I sold him to somebody that I knew, and they gelded him, and it was a horrible gelding, and he was in a lot of pain from that. And then there were behavior things that came as a result of it. A lot of trauma happened between me and him, and he would come back and forth in my life. And it was this, he just kept coming, like he wouldn't leave my life. And I tried because I couldn't afford him. And so I would try to give him other homes that were better, that could support him. And then he just kept coming back in my life. And I was like, and it was always in like some devastating way, like somebody did him wrong. But what was interesting is both times that he came back in, both of those people were going to put him down. And I heard him talking to me before that. And like I've always been a really good horseman and a good, I mean, I like to think that I'm really good at connectedness, and I hear critters and things and little tree spirits in my own way, but I'd never heard a horse like I had heard him before. And I was sitting with Catherine at her ranch. It was the first time we hung out, and I was like, and I said it out loud. I said, Dragon's not okay. And she was like, who's Dragon? What's going on? Like, did she lose her mind? I was like, he's not okay. Something's not right. And I messaged the lady, and then sure enough, she's letting me know he's being put down, and I ended up getting him back. And I remember being like, God, that's so crazy to be so connected to something so fiercely that you can feel that. And so that was a big lesson in that. And then he's also the one that taught me about the nervous system in the way that he did, because he was so, he was an ex-Mexican dancing horse. He went through horrible dressage trauma. He had the worst gelding castration of all time in eternity. So he had chronic pain that, I mean, I tag teamed with vets all over the world, UC Davis, big top name trainers. Like we tried to think about anything, and nobody had a solution for him. And so I was at the point of putting him down as well. And then I kind of a last stitch effort, I gave him Bandamine. Like when he was having one of his really bad, he would have bad behavior episodes. He would like trigger, and then he would just pace and pace and pace and pace, or he would start pee-offing and biting the air and foaming at the mouth, like a horrific situation. And I was like, well, that's not quality of life. So
Mhm.
gave him Bandamine, and he stopped. So I was like, that's interesting. So it's a pain thing that's
Mhm.
causing it. Okay. And so then I just sat out with him every day for like a week, and I just sat in his pasture, and I just watched him, and I watched when he was stressed, and I watched when he was happy, and I watched when he looked sound, and I watched when he looked very lame. And I was able to, for whatever reason, just and the lens and my desperation of trying to find what the heck was going on and how I can save my best friend, what I found was there was a particular posture that he would walk in where he would be sound. And that's what we call pillar one now. Is I was watching him, and I was like, so when his neck is relaxed, and when his cervical spine is an extension, and his pole is open, and we have this this exactly what we call pillar one, something triggers the whole rest of his body and he's sound. And when he trigger and that when he was always in his parasympathetic state too, that was when he was relaxed and happy. And then when he would get stressed out, he would come up, he would brace those muscles, it would swap. And so when those muscles were braced up, then we were in our sympathetic and he was also lame. And that, yeah, I had to know everything that there was to know about that. So I dove into my anatomy books and I dove into nerve books and I dove into everything and I figured out everything that I teach is because of him and because of that
Mhm.
week. So yeah,
Yeah.
he's it.
Yeah. I always say that the nervous system is such an underrated, untalked about thing.
I know. And I mean, and people talk about it more and more, like it's getting more talked about, but it's still not like it's so surface level
Mhm.
still,
Yeah.
like
And
there's a
and
lot.
I yeah. And I also feel like the connection piece that you were talking about and how the importance of that importance of you being able to regulate yourself, know where you're at, doesn't, I mean, it's hardly talked about when you're talking about regulating your horse's nervous system and getting them into
It
a
has to
place where
be.
they can,
Yeah. Hmm.
where it's like there's these two pieces to it where I think people want to go outward and go, how do I fix this? Where do I need to put their body? And you're like, where are you right now? You know, how tied in is your agenda to getting the horse like this? And I feel like we do attract a community of givers
Hmm.
where they want to help. I mean, anyone that's attracted to any of us is not someone, at least in some realm, wanting to understand their horse and wanting to give back to them and wanting to do for them when it's almost like what we talked about, and I know what you talked a lot about at the Elements of Connection clinic, where it's like, can you receive? And asking your horses to be in the receiving
Yeah.
mode, simultaneously you having to be able to go into the receiving mode, and how all of these like life experiences that we've had actually are trying to form that in you, and then your horses are just poking at it like, not yet, not yet, not
Oh,
yet.
oh, totally. And I remember being called out by my coach, a business coach that I was working with, and she's really into like the, esoteric and energy things. And one of the things that I had struggled with my entire life was going into like a feminine energy and being in that nice feminine, soft, like receiving energy because I was stuck in survival mode from the time I was an infant. So
Mhm.
I'm very tough and I'm very warrior, like, and which is fine. And I appreciate that side of me and I always have that side of me. But it's also, if I can't be receptive, but then I'm asking all of my horses to be receptive and I'm teaching everybody that this is the best way for our horses to be. Meanwhile, I'm still really struggling with this, a little out of integrity, don't you think? Kind of how she said it. And I was like, and I just remember like I had thought about it that way, but I hadn't, like, nobody really called me out on it, I think. And she was just so beautiful in the way that she did it. And it just stung really bad. And I was like, shit, you're so right. So yeah, I mean, I've the last year especially, I think I've tried really, really, really hard to focus on myself, bringing myself into a receptive energy and what does that feel like, and being able to tell when I am and when I'm not, and getting tools for how to get myself back into it. Because if I can't do that, I have no business asking the horses to do it.
Mhm.
So, and then trying to explain that to people is hard. And I don't know how to teach that to people necessarily. I can do a little bit, but I feel like that's where you come in and you're just really good at like, let's explore some of these things.
Oh, yeah, and I feel like why it's so important to for people to be able to have that piece is for them to understand how terrifying it can be and how
Yeah.
vulnerable it can feel,
Yeah.
so that they have some different level of capacity to be empathetic towards their horse when they're asking them to soften their body. It's like, I think that that doesn't occur to people, because it didn't occur to me actually probably until like maybe a year ago, where it was like, it is so scary to say, can you soften when you have been protecting yourself for so long, and then you're invited into this space. And I don't think, for me, it was like, put the horse's head here, and then, yep, and then your body's gonna feel better. And like, but beyond like that, of emotionally what's going on for them when you're saying, hey, I know that you've had all of this protection around you from all of the experiences you've ever had in your life, and you really feel like this is what has kept you alive on this planet. Now I want you to release all of that because I've asked you to. And it's for you
Right.
to ask somebody to do that, it's nearly impossible. It's like there's an entire, container that needs to be created, but people are out there not understanding that piece. So I think that's why the importance of going through that experience for yourself so that you can actually hold the space for your horse to do the same thing is so
Mhm.
big, and maybe the hardest part sometimes.
It is, and it's, and it's because if you're not in a receiving energy, your lens around what's going on with your horse is not gonna be good either. Like you're gonna miss things. You're gonna miss where they're stuck at and bypass. One of the things I was looking over the question about like an interest and like what do you do? And I'm like, oh, the main thing like that was my business, but what I've really learned and kind of like narrowed down finally is the thing that I'm really gifted at is taking a horse and rider team, and I can dissect down to the very core of the core connection issues that is causing it, whether it's in hand or whether it's in their body or the minute you get on. And Tara and I are in the middle of doing this, I mean, like super profound course. Like it's the coolest thing I've ever done by far. And it's been so cool to have these people come in of all different levels, all different disciplines, all different places with their horses, and all of them were still missing in some of these like similar areas. It's just people aren't, they're not seeing it, and for some reason I can. And because I have that purist like full approach to it, we don't skip it. If we have to do the whole course and just focus on this thing, you will get more out of it than you would have ever gotten if you were doing piaffe passage changes. Like it doesn't, that doesn't matter, right? And so having the ability to show people that and to really help bring them into a state of receptiveness and awareness in a different way, and letting them see their horses in that different way, and taking the time to look at themselves and see, because it's always humans that cause the connection issues. We are the issue. We are the common denominator here. So being able to trace it back and be like, okay, like, and sometimes we get horses that have it from other people, right? You get an off the track horse, you didn't do that. And every interaction that you have with that horse from here on forward is going to either help it or not. And so how can we be really mindful? So those are the things that I love. And that's, same thing for this clinic. That's all I want to bring to people at this point.
Yeah.
The pillars and the nerve release stuff is it's just a bonus, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the fact that what it gives people permission to do, and also other trainers to do, which I think is where it feels like most trainers struggle, is because they know, because we were all there, we know there's like a better way, but then there's this transition of I want to do what's right for the horse, but also I need to feed my children and pay rent.
Right.
And to give permission to people to say, no, you're not ready to move on to the next piece, and this will actually be more valuable for you. And to like know it because you've lived it, and be able to like stand in your power around that and release the clients that don't want to actually sustainably like sort this stuff out, I think is like really huge, because I think that's what most people struggle with. They like see their peers, or they see their trainer, or they see whatever saying a thing, and they can't just stay in that power and go, no, this is what I'm doing for me and my horse, and this feels right, so I'm going to stay here with that. And that's a big chunk of what I really want to bring for people, is to be able to like be in the receiving mode, to hear the messages from your horse and hear yourself intuitively figure out what's right for you, without the external voices and noise of this is the way it's always been and this is how you do it. And tap more into, wait a minute, does it actually feel good to me? And I don't actually have to do this. Like, what can I do that feels good? And find those people in that community that can hold that space for you. So I think that's like, when we talk about the receiving mode, it's like that is the piece where you get to receive that information, and then also your horse is being allowed to be safe and know that they can be heard and acknowledged, and
And
you can
receiving
back
the
off.
support around it too. And that's,
Yeah.
again, going back to the value of our community is you can have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to step into this scary space, and I'm going to have the opportunity to step into this situation with inviting my horse into a scary space. And I have a group of mentors that know this in their like everything. Like it is in my bones that this is the right way to do it.
Mhm.
We're always going to learn more tools, and there's always going to be better ways of teaching things. And I'm so open to learning. I'm so excited to learn from the other presenters that are coming too. It's my
Mhm.
favorite part about the groups that you do, is I feel like I get to be a student too.
Mhm.
And when it comes to our approach with the horses and where we are with this, like the connection and the foundation, the basics, whatever you want to call it, of us being like, no, like we're going to be really, really clear about this. Like that's not ever going to change. I'm never going to
Mhm.
waver on that ever again, because I can't unsee how profound it is. It'll never
Mhm.
happen. So,
Yeah. So
so cool.
here comes this question.
Uh-oh.
Because there's so many little things, right? And so many big things. But if you had a magic wand and you could shift something in the industry, What do you feel like would be your, number one thing or the most impactful thing or the thing that you would choose first?
Really, it would be for everybody to truly understand how to operate within the horse's nervous system and to choose to do so,
Mhm.
because that's it. I mean, it's the coolest thing that I think, and right, wrong, or indifferent, if people don't agree with us, I think it's the coolest thing about the horse's bodies is that the muscles that are required to be developed for a horse to be a sound riding partner and to be sound in their bodies, have good skeletal alignment, free of nerve compression, all of that. The muscles that are required for that pattern of development can only be attained when the horse has enough schooling in the parasympathetic. That's it. And when you really, really like play with that and you understand it, what it tells you is that in order to be able to correctly develop a horse, you have to rise as horsemen and you have to have a consent relationship with your horse where they're always feeling safe. And you'll never achieve it another way. Like it's the coolest thing that the gods put into them, like by far, I think,
Mhm.
because there's no other way around it.
Mhm.
You can't rig it. You can't force it. You can't drug it. You have to be able to work with the nervous system to achieve it. And what a cool gift that is.
Yeah, I think that is the best part because like you said, there is no way around it.
No.
You can't, there's no way around it. The only way that is going to happen is.
And it's through, and I want to emphasize on this a little bit too, because it's the nervous system, but it's also through touch. So there's in that pendulum swift that we're talking about, where people just kind of like throw their horses out in the pasture and they never talk to them. Horses' bodies don't always get better doing that because you're still not actually addressing the connection issue. So we have a huge swing of people that are really into like doing all liberty work and positive reinforcement. And obviously I adore that, like Tara, right? Like the goddess of it. And I mean, like I am in awe of her horses all the time. But the reason why I love Tara's training is because when I went out to see Tara's horses, all of her horses are balanced and beautiful and well developed. I don't see that very often in the positive reinforcement states. So it's not enough to be like, well, my
Hmm.
horses are relaxed and happy because I feed them cookies and I don't ever address anything. It also
Hmm.
has to be, can you touch your horse? Can you interact with your horse? When does that brace come in? Because if there's a brace in there,
Hmm.
they're not fully in that parasympathetic. And so those are those little pieces that we get to kind of unravel and to play with. It's not good enough to just be like, oh, I'm never going to touch my horse and then they'll be naturally in calm. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wish it was.
Is there anything else that you feel like you want to share before we wrap up that would make you feel more complete?
I don't think so. I'm just
Cool.
really excited. I think those were stellar questions and a good conversation. And yeah, I'm really excited to see everybody and for all of us presenters to just kind of come forward with all of these really awesome little trinkets and tools and knowingness that we have, and to be able to offer that and to offer a community of follow-up too, so that
Yeah.
people don't feel abandoned. Like you come in and you get this huge like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and then you go back. It's the thing that I struggle with doing regular clinics, and I've been trying to think of ways of reformatting it, because when I do my clinics, a lot of the time I feel like I'm doing triage. And
Hmm.
so I get in all these different horses with all these different ailments, and the humans and the horses, and they're all dysregulated and they all come from different stories. And they come in and they have this really profound, 2 hour session with me. And then, but then they have to go back to wherever they came from. And
Hmm.
that's tough. And
Yeah.
so I think that people getting to come and have a more immersive experience with all of us, and then
Mhm.
having the whole community of things, like that's so the way to go. It's going to be so powerful.
Yeah. It's gonna be really cool. I'm pretty excited and mildly scared, but pretty excited.
He's so good.
I
Nothing to
know
be
it's
scared
gonna
about.
be. All right. So if people want to find more about you or and work with you and find out any of your programs, where can they find you?
Balancedyourmovementmethod.com is the best website. If you are local to Oregon or want to bring your horse to Oregon, or you want to come to Oregon and play, LazarisSportHorses.com is my home ranch website. And so we do more personal offerings around that, like intensives and fun things. I have two wonderful ladies coming in next week to spend a week with me with their horses. And so those are going to be really fun. I've enjoyed these a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's it.
Fun to have
Other than
your
that, the Facebooks.
the
I'm really
the
on Facebook.
socials.
The socials. I'm on Instagram a little bit, not as much, because they don't let me write as much. There's always like there's the whole stupid word limit thing, and I have a lot of words sometimes, and so I stay mostly on Facebook.
I don't like the restrictions
I
that
don't like
limit me.
restrictions. I don't operate well with restrictions. Yeah. So
All
that's
right.
that.
Rad. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And I'm excited to see you in October. Hopefully before then, but
Yeah,
October.
hopefully.